Welcome to Home Remodeler Toolbox, the podcast dedicated to empowering remodelers and builders to build and grow successful businesses. Join your host, Bob Vance, founder of Home Remodeler SEO, as he brings you industry insights and strategies that will help you build a thriving business, no matter what level you're at in your business. Whether you're a thriving multi-million-dollar business or you're working on building your business from the foundation up, this podcast is your go-to source for industry secrets and actionable strategies that you can implement in your business to get to that next level. So, turn on, tune in, and let's help you build your business foundation one building block at a time.
Welcome back to the Home Remodeler Toolbox podcast. I'm your host, Bob Vance, and today we're going to play a game that might make your palms a little sweaty. So imagine for a second that a law was passed tomorrow, effective immediately, stating that remodelers are no longer allowed to provide written estimates, no line item breakdowns, no ballpark figures in an email, no detailed spreadsheets for the client to pore over with a magnifying glass and a red pen. You walk into a lead's home. You look at the dated 1980s kitchen with its peeling laminate and flickering fluorescent lights. You talk about the vision, and then you just have to ask for the job based on who you are and how you work. And so the question is, could you close that deal? If you had to rely entirely on your company's brand, your personal authority, your process, and the sheer amount of trust that you've built in that first hour, would that homeowner sign with you? Or would the entire sales process grind to a screeching halt because you didn't have a number to hide behind? Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that's insane, Bob. Nobody buys a $150,000 renovation without a price. And you're right. In the real world, numbers do matter. But this thought experiment isn't about economics. It's about leverage. If removing the bid makes it impossible for you to win, it's a giant red flag that your business is being viewed as a commodity rather than a premium service. It means you aren't selling a solution, you're selling a price tag. Today, we're going to dismantle that price-driven trap and talk about how to build a business so strong that the bid becomes the least interesting part of the conversation. And so let's first talk about the invisible trap of the price-driven environment. Most remodelers tell me they compete on quality. They talk about their attention to detail, their commitment to excellence, their quality craftsmanship. And these are great words and phrases, but here's the cold, hard truth. Every single one of your competitors is saying the exact same thing. When every contractor claims to be the best, those claims become white noise to a homeowner. When the messaging is identical, the homeowner defaults to the only objective metric left, which is the bottom line. And so we kind of get to the remodeling milk syndrome. Think about it like buying a gallon of milk. You don't care about the craftsmanship of the plastic jug or the vision of the dairy farmer. You want 2% milk that isn't expired. Therefore, you buy the cheapest one. If you haven't differentiated your remodeling business through your process and your positioning, you are remodeling milk. The homeowner looks at the three bids, sees three companies that all look fine, and picks the one that leaves more money in their savings account. That's typically how a lot of those lead generation platforms work. They attract that kind of buyer where they get three bids, they take the cheapest one. That's why most of those lead gen platforms aren't very attractive for the quality top end remodelers and builders that we talk to on a regular basis. And so if you want to break out of this, you have to stop acting like you're a commodity. So when price becomes the primary factor, the homeowner's brain chemistry kind of shifts. They stop looking for the best company and they start looking for the safest bet for the fewest dollars. This is a race to the bottom in pricing. In this environment, you aren't a craftsman or a professional guide. You're a line item in a budget. When you allow the conversation to be dominated by the bid, you're essentially telling a homeowner, my time, my expertise, and my unique approach are worth exactly zero. Only the materials and the labor have value. This is the fundamental mistake that keeps remodelers working 80 hours a week for margins that barely cover overhead. We just took on a new client, a remodeler, and they're over seven figures, but their margins are so compressed that they're not even making 10%. And that's this conundrum here of really not having value, not having positioning of the quality of work you're doing and the reputation that you're bringing to the table. And so let's talk about that psychology of the modern homeowner and how they're viewing this. And to win without a bid, or to win when your bid is the most expensive, you have to understand the modern homeowner's journey. By the time they call you, they've spent 40 hours on Pinterest, they've read your Google reviews, they've looked at your Instagram. They're informed, in other words, but they are also deeply anxious. Remodeling is one of the few industries where a consumer is expected to hand over six figures to a person who is then going to literally tear their house apart. So it's a high risk, high stress transaction. And let's talk about the visibility gap in that. When a homeowner receives those three bids, they're looking for a reason to feel safe. If all three contractors seem nice and professional, the price becomes the tiebreaker. Why? Because price is visible and quantifiable. Trust, expertise, and project management are invisible until the project actually starts. That's the visibility gap. So your job in the sales process is to make the invisible, your reliability, your system, your skill, so visible that the price becomes a secondary concern. And then, you also have that fear of being taken advantage of. Let's acknowledge the big elephant in the room, the bad contractor metaphor. Every homeowner has heard a horror story about a kitchen that took a year to finish, or a contractor who disappeared with a deposit. I had someone call me. They wanted me to take over their project after their contractor was found sleeping in their home and doing drugs. That was his temporary home for the time being. And I was initially in that bidding process. This is when I was back doing remodeling and custom builds. I was in the initial bidding, and they went with the other guy because his price was much cheaper. And then when he turned out to be homeless and living in their house doing drugs, and they found a crack pipe and all this stuff in their house, obviously they fired him. And that's when they came back to me, and I said, no, I'm not taking on this project now. I don't know how shoddy of work he had done at that point in time. And so it was just it was a bad experience. And so everyone's had, or heard about those bad experiences. And so, homeowners get more detailed in, when they ask for a detailed line item bid, they're not usually trying to be difficult. They're just trying to build a cage around you. They want to see every nut and bolt because they're terrified of losing control. They want everything in that box invisible. So, if you give them a 20-page bid, but haven't really built trust, they will use that bid to now shop you. They'll take your hard-earned research, 20 pages worth, to a cheaper guy and ask, can you do this for 10% less? Can you cut this line item here? Where can you make some cuts to this? And so to stop this, you have to sell the relationship before you actually sell the remodeling job. And so, let's kind of dive into the danger of justifying your price. This is a very dangerous territory when you feel you have to actually justify. I see this all the time. A remodeler sends over a bid. The client says, wow, that's higher than we expected. And then a remodeler then goes into defensive mode. Well, we use premium subflooring, and our labor rates are higher because our guys are master craftsmen, or everyone is a legal citizen of our country, and we're not using cheap labor, or lumber prices are up 12% this quarter. On and on you can go with your defense of your pricing. And the answer to this is just stop Stop doing that. The moment you start justifying your price, you've lost. You're now arguing for the validity of your costs rather than the value of your results. You're essentially taking a homeowner, asking them to go ahead and audit your business's overhead. And so let's talk about selling the hole and not the drill. In marketing, there's an old saying, people don't want to buy a 1/4-inch drill. They want a 1/4-inch hole. People buy the hole, not the drill. They don't care about the drill. They need the hole. The drill is only the tool that's going to make that hole for them. And so when you're operating without a bid or mentally, approach the sale in that way, you're focusing on the outcome. You aren't selling 2x4s and labor hours. You're selling a Saturday morning in a beautiful functional kitchen where the drawers don't stick and the lighting is perfect. You're selling the feeling of pride when they host their first dinner party. You're selling the peace of mind that comes from knowing the job was done to code and won't leak and won't fall apart in 5 years. And then comes the power shift. What happens when the bid is gone, when you're not relying on that? So let's go back to the very beginning, to our no bid world. If you can't show them a number, what tools do you have left? You have 3 primary pillars of influence. Pillar 1 is your diagnostic ability. Most contractors walk into a house and they start measuring. They're thinking about the how. An expert starts by asking why. Why do you want to move this island? How does this current layout affect your morning routine? What is the one thing about this house that makes you want to move? When you diagnose the problem deeper than your competitors, the homeowner begins to see you as a consultant rather than a laborer. And then pillar number 2 is clarity on your process. Can you walk them through day 1 to day 60 with such precision that they can practically see the dust barriers and smell the fresh paint? If you say, we'll get started in a few weeks and it should take about a month, you're just a commodity. If you say on Monday of week 1, our site lead Mike will meet you at 8 a.m. to install the floor protection and set up a zip wall system. By Wednesday, demo will be complete and you'll receive a photo update of the exposed framing. Then now you're starting to talk the language of construction, of remodeling, and this positions you as the authority. And then pillar 3 is that authority. It's that alpha position. Do you sound like a contractor looking for work, or do you sound like the expert providing a solution? The no bid approach requires you to hide the alpha position in the relationship. You need to hold that alpha position. That doesn't mean being arrogant. It means being the leader of the project. Homeowners are looking for a leader to take the weight of the decision off of their shoulders. You are the expert. You are the authority. You need to have all the answers and to convey that expertise, and it doesn't rely on your pricing. And then that leads us to trust, which is the only currency that matters, right? Trust is not a soft skill. In remodeling, trust is a financial asset. There's a direct correlation between the level of trust you establish and the margin you can charge. Trust is built through a combination of credibility. Do you know what you're doing? Reliability. Do you do what you say? And intimacy. Do you care about the homeowner's specific house and their specific concerns and the dream that they're trying to build? All of that divided by self-orientation. Are you just trying to get my money, in other words? And so if your self-orientation is high, meaning you're clearly desperate for the job, you're self-oriented, in other words, trust is going to plummet no matter how good your bid is. But if you show up and are willing to tell the homeowner, actually, I wouldn't recommend doing that because it won't give you the ROI you're looking for, or something of that nature, then your trust is going to skyrocket. You've proven you care more about the project than the actual paycheck. always remember that people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. We all know that saying. And so consistency as a trusted builder, this trust is going to be built in the small gaps. The first impression. Did you answer the phone or did it go to a full voicemail box? I've had contractors, remodelers call me looking for help. I call them back and they don't even have their voicemail set up. I mean, are you kidding me? Are you running a hobby? Is this something you do after work? Or are you actually running a real business? Like, answer your phone. Have someone answer your phone. Voicemail, at the if you have to, but have an answering service. Certainly set your voicemail box up, please. The other thing that could build trust is the punctuality. Did you show up at 2 p.m. like you said, or did you show up at 10 after the hour? Those are 10 minutes where that homeowner could just be sitting there absolutely boiling because, they had to meet you there or something. So, be punctual. And then the communication, did you send a thank you email after the meeting? Do you always send roundups after you have visits or site visits or calls with the client? We do that after every call we have. We send a wrap up so that there's always a reference they can look back to if they forget something. It keeps everyone in line and aligned. And so if you can't manage your calendar for a sales call, the homeowner is going to assume you certainly can't manage a whole bathroom or kitchen gut and rebuild. So, if you want to close your bid with, your pre-construction behavior, must be flawless. If you're looking to close jobs, close bids out, your pre-construction behavior, that sales process, the initial communications, the punctuality, the first impressions, that is a model for who you are and who you're going to be the next 6 months of working with that homeowner, whether you like it or not. That's just how it works. And then there's also those homeowners, that say, I felt like they had a plan. I once coached a remodeler who was consistently the highest bidder in this market, sometimes by 20 or 30%. I asked him why he kept winning. He told me about a client who chose him over 2 cheaper options. And that client said to him, the other guys told me they can do it. You told me how you would do it. And so the other contractors in this story that happened a while back, they walked through the house, they took some measurements and said, yeah, we can knock that wall down. No problem. I'll send you a quote, yada, yada. And then the remodeler that works with us, he walked through and said, to take this wall down, we're going to need to relocate the HVAC stack. And we'll do that in week 2. We'll use a HEPA filter, air scrubber to make sure your kids aren't breathing drywall dust in the next room. You'll get a daily update through your portal by 5 p.m. every day. So you don't have to wonder who's coming in your house tomorrow. Things like that. He didn't give them a bid in that moment. He gave them control. He gave them a vision of a stress-free future for the homeowner and for his family. By the time that the bid finally arrived, the price was almost an afterthought because the client had already moved in to the new kitchen in their minds. They were already living that kitchen, serving dinner in it. And then let's talk about positioning and selling before you actually speak. And so if you want to make that no bid challenge easy, this world of no bids, no pricing, just you selling on your authority and reputation, you need to fix your positioning first. Positioning is the work you do before the first phone call. It's your reputation in the community, the quality of your website, and the specific niche that you occupy. Maybe you're really known for home additions, but you're not known so much for basements. Maybe that's a stay in your lane kind of example there. So you really want to highlight what you're really known for and really push that in your marketing, in your messaging. And ultimately, you want to escape that generalist trap. If you're a general contractor and that's all you position yourself as, you're just a commodity. You're competing with every guy in a truck and a miter saw. But if you're the historic home specialist of your city, now you're an expert. So think about it this way. You don't go to a heart surgeon and ask if he can, sharpen the pencil on the estimate. You pay the specialist because you trust the outcome. The specialist doesn't have to justify their bid because their expertise is the actual value. I mean, think about it. When you go to your heart surgeon, do you go to 3 heart surgeons and ask for bids? You're going and talking to them because of their expertise, and whatever they tell you is what you believe in and is what you go with. They're in a no bid world. And think about how effective that is for them. Now, obviously, there's insurance and all of our broken healthcare and everything else, but think about that. They are selling on value and expertise. And so for you to strengthen your positioning, narrow your focus. Stop trying to do everything for everyone. And then also show the process, not just the result. Everyone shows the before and after photos. Start showing some during photos, maybe some during videos that you can put on Facebook. Show your clean job sites, show your organized trailers and trucks. Everything is all in order. It's not chaos on the job sites you're working on, because people are gonna be like, oh my God, I don't want this for my house. They're gonna destroy my flowers. They're gonna kill my lawn. Dirt's gonna be everywhere. They won't pick up after the job at the end of every day. Things like that are gonna affect whether you win or lose jobs. And then third, to strengthen your positioning, content is king. We say that over and over again in marketing. So, write articles or record videos explaining common pitfalls in remodeling. Everything that put that out there in your content and your videos that you make. Prove that you know more than the other guy. And then the sales process without a bid. If you want to transform your sales process, just start acting like the bid doesn't exist for the first 2 meetings. And so this requires a 4-step framework. The first step is deep discovery, the consultant phase. So most contractors spend about 10 minutes listening and about 50 minutes talking. And so flip that around. Ask the homeowner why they want the change. What is the pain point? Is it that they can't host Thanksgiving because the kitchen is too small? Is it that they're embarrassed to have friends over? When you understand the emotional driver, you can sell the solution to that specific pain point, which is priceless. That will win you the job. And then step 2 is the process walkthrough. This is what we call the guide phase. Treat your process as a product. Explain your signature 5-step system. Even if it's just a standard way you work, give it a name, give it a system. When you name your process, it becomes something tangible that the homeowner can actually buy. They're buying into that vision, that process, that system. You're selling the way you work as much as the work itself. And then step 3 is radical transparency. And this is where you move from the guide phase to the expert phase. So addressing the elephant in a room before the client does. Talk about how messy remodeling is. Talk about the potential for surprises behind the walls that you're going to find. And when you're honest about the downsides, the client trusts you more when you talk about the upsides later on. You aren't a salesman. You're a truth teller. You're just telling it like it is, and you're giving your real world experience, and you're setting proper expectations. And we know how important it is to set proper expectations, right? And then step 4 becomes the phase of the visionary, outcomes over inputs. Instead of saying, we use 5-8 of an inch drywall, you're saying we use a thicker drywall grade to ensure your home stays quiet and the finish remains perfectly smooth for years. So you're kind of connecting material and labor choice to a benefit for the homeowner. Whether that's really proven out with science or not. Obviously, there are benefits to using different types of materials, or maybe even water-resistant drywall that you might use in a bathroom. Why? Because of the condensation that forms in a bathroom, so on and so forth. And let me just kind of go into why most remodelers and builders actually struggle with trying to employ this no bid system. And the reason is that most guys won't do this is because it's hard. It's much easier to just drop off a PDF with a price at the bottom and just hope for the best. And we know that hope is not a strategy, right? Relying on a bid is just a crutch. It allows you to avoid the hard work of building a brand and an experience. But it's the crutch is also what keeps your margins low and your stress levels high. So let's not rely on that bid as a crutch, and your margins are going to grow a little bit and your stress level is going to go down. So that's a perfect combination. And then, there's this addiction to the number. Many remodelers feel that the bid is their shield. If the client doesn't like the price, the remodeler can say, well, that's just what it costs. That's, all costs have went up, and that's inflation, and it's just what it is. Yeah, but this is really just a passive way to run a business. It leaves your success in the hands of the market rather than in your own hands and in the own positioning that you can do for yourself. If you win on price, you will lose on price. The moment a hungrier, younger contractor comes into your area who's willing to work for $5,000 less, $10,000 less, your loyal clients, I say that with air quotes, they will vanish. Some will, some won't, but some will definitely go for the cheaper pricing. But if you win on trust and process and you've built that reputation, you're already protected by a moat that the cheap guy can't ever cross. And so let's reframe the role of the estimate. And let's be clear. I'm not suggesting you stop giving bids. That'd be a great way to get sued or to go broke or both. What I'm suggesting is you reframe the role of the price in this process. In a healthy remodeling business, the bid is not a proposal to be considered. It is a validation of a decision that has already been made. When the homeowner says, we love your plan, we love your team, we're ready to go, just send over the final number so we can sign, that's when you've won. The price is just the final piece of the puzzle. It shouldn't be the foundation of the relationship. And so really quick on that price validation mindset, imagine the price as the last 5% of the sales process. The first 95% of the sales process was spent on proving you understand their problem, demonstrating you have a professional system for them, building a relationship with the homeowner where they feel heard, and then setting expectations for the schedule, the timeline, the mess that's going to be there, kind of everything, just making sure that you guys are aligned on expectations. And so if you've done that first 95% correctly, the price just needs to be reasonable. It doesn't need to be the lowest. It just needs to kind of be in line. And so a practical system that you can set up for a no-bid culture to actually run a business this way, you need a system that supports that trust model. And so we've got the pre-construction agreement. One of the best ways to move away from bidding is to start charging for your pre-construction services. A pre-construction agreement allows you to get paid for the time you spend designing, estimating, and planning. When a client pays for that pre-construction agreement, they're no longer shopping you. They're now your client. You've closed the deal before the final construction bid is even finished. You could still lose the build part of the project, but most likely you're not going to at this point. And then client portals, using software like Builder or other CRMs out there. It's not just about project management. It's a sales tool. It shows the client, look how organized we are. You don't have to chase me for updates. They're all right here in your portal. And so that builds the perception of a plan that you guys have already talked about earlier. So a client portal is really nice if that's something that you can build into your website, or it already is built into your CRM. There's so many different CRMs out there. So that's something to think about, is having that client portal. And then professional photography and video. Now, if you want to sell a premium experience without relying on a low bid, you must look the role of premium. High resolution photos of your team on site, not just the finished kitchen. That's going to humanize your business and build intimacy in the trust equation. They actually see your team. They maybe see you. Oh, hey, there's Dave out there. There's Mike talking to my project manager, Sarah. So it's really going to humanize that experience, and it's going to really go a long way into building the perception of your brand. And then there's that handling the how much question early on. How much is this going to cost? You all heard that, right? I get that all the time. In the real world, the homeowner is going to ask for a price in the first 10 minutes. You can't ignore it, but you shouldn't answer it directly with a hard number. And so we kind of employ the range method here. When they ask how much, give them a range based on previous projects. So you can say, well, a kitchen of this size with the level of finish that you're looking for usually falls between $80K and $110K. Does that range align with what you're thinking? And then if they say yes, you move back to the no bid variables, the process, the trust, the vision, so on. If they say no, that doesn't align with their pricing, well, now you've just saved yourself 10 hours of estimating for a client who can't afford you. Either way, you're not competing on a line item bid. You're competing on your ability to guide them through their budget. And then there's also the long-term impact of higher margins and how they equate to a better life for you. When you stop being a bidder and start being a solution provider, everything changes. Your margins increase. You can charge a trust premium. Your clients are better. You attract people who value their time and their home more than they value a $500 discount if you sign today. Your stress decreases. You aren't constantly looking over your shoulder at what the guy down the street is charging. You're not trying to keep up with the Joneses, or I should say keep down with the Joneses, because it's usually a race to the bottom in pricing. And so this results in really the freedom of being the expert. There's a massive psychological weight that is lifted when you realize you don't have to be the cheapest. It allows you to actually do the job right. It allows you to pay your subs what they're worth. It allows you to buy the better materials. Ultimately, it allows you to be the craftsman that you actually want to be. And so, in conclusion, we're building a business here. We're not building a price list. At the end of the day, your goal isn't to be the best estimator in town. Your goal is to be the most trusted advisor for homeowners in your market looking for remodeling or home construction services. So the no bid challenge, it's really a gut check for you. It's a way to see if your business has meat on its bones or if it's just a hollow shell held together by low margins. If the thought of closing a job without a bid feels impossible, don't be discouraged. Use that feeling as a roadmap. It tells you that you need to work on your communication. It tells you that you probably need to define your process a little more. And it also tells you that you need to sharpen your positioning. And so next time you walk into a prospective new client's home, try to forget about the spreadsheet for a moment. Look them in the eye, find out what they're actually afraid of, and show them that you're the only person with a plan to solve it. Because when you build a business where price is no longer the primary reason you win, you don't just make money, you get better clients, you get better projects, and you get a whole lot more sleep at night. That's it for today. Thanks again for turning on and tuning in to the Home Remodeler Toolbox podcast. Now it's your turn to go out and shine. Get out there, build something that's worth more than just the sum of its parts. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Home Remodeler Toolbox podcast. Take care, everyone.
Hey, if you liked our podcast, join the remodeling community and hit subscribe. We would love to hear from you. So be sure to share your thoughts on what you might want to hear about in future episodes. If you're ready to take your business to the next level, visit homeremodellerseo.com and check out our services that can help build your foundation for success. Thanks for tuning in to the Home Remodeler Toolbox podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.